Coach Brandon here, and today I'm going to be talking about how to improve your sumo deadlift. And one of the most common issues I see people run into is they have issues at the top, they have issues at the middle of their deadlift, of course, and they always chase the fixes at the point where the faults actually happen. But the problem is they're kind of being misled by tackling those specific issues. Most issues at the top, most issues at the middle happen because of the bottom. More specifically, they happen because of the setup. I would even argue as much as 95% at least of the issues that happen upstream in the deadlift towards the top, the concentric, actually happen because of setup issues. So when we start talking about solutions for somebody's faults they have towards the top of the deadlift, the bottom of the deadlift, or wherever it may be, we always want to start with the setup because that has the most holistic benefit to somebody's proficiency within the sumo deadlift. So today I want to talk about 5 different drills I very much suggest people do to improve the whole efficiency of the entirety of their deadlift. The first one's going to be addressing external rotation at the hip. A lot of individuals try to do the sumo deadlift like the conventional deadlift. We have to treat the sumo like the sumo, the conventional like the conventional. And what we see when people treat it as such is they get in this nice wide stance, they get ready to deadlift, and then they shoot their knees straight forward. They end up being really hinged over and bent over, and they end up having a really hard time at the top here because of it. They have to get used to externally rotating as they set up so they create that sumo deadlift like position, that really proficient position we pull into for a fantastic pull. So that's going to be the first drill, teaching that skill. The second one's going to be about lat engagement. It's going to be a lat R&T drill where we're practicing depressing our lats and building upper back tension against the load as we set up, because that's another really common issue. Individuals that don't really work their back against the barbell, again, even if they do pretty good with externally rotating, they stay bent over and then have issues at lockout. Then what do people do? They address the lockout. They do block pulls, but this doesn't address the core issue. So that's going to be the second one. The third one is going to be a drill where we start to learn how to actually be more positionally aware as we set up. Just going to be a tempo setup deadlift. So in this drill here, we're going to be going incredibly slow, 4 to 6 count setup just to pull into position to aid in the positional awareness, really get motor development skills going, and just benefit your setup. The fourth one's going to be a setup drill where we call the positional deadlift. And what we're going to do is we're going to practice building so much tension in a sumo deadlift, we pop the load off the floor just by setting up. And this is going to be a fantastic drill for individuals struggling with the tension building side of things. Fifth and final one is just going to be a tempo deadlift. Tempo concentric and eccentric, again, aiding in positional awareness and motor control and motor learning to benefit the deadlift in its entirety. The first drill we're going to be doing today is again facilitating external rotation in the hips. We're going to do a band R&T drill to do this. We're going to take a band about this size, could be a little bit heavier, if anything is a little bit on the lighter side, and we're going to double it up like so, and then put our feet in between it. From here, we're going to put it right about here on our knee. Just below our knee here seems to be a good spot. You could go a little bit higher up if you prefer. It doesn't really matter too much. We just want it to be in this general area. From here, we're going to get into our normal sumo deadlift stance. For me, it's going to be about here, toes 45 degrees, stand upright, go through our normal setup, have a nice hinge down to the barbell. And as we actually pull into position, we're really focusing on that external rotation of the hip component of things. So this is what it's going to look like here. Giving my body something to externally rotate against helps facilitate the specific motor action better. And this is something that most people struggle with in the sumo deadlift, especially at first. So I'm going to do it just like so. And I'm going to do that several times. So doing that anywhere from 3 to 5 times to prime your sumo deadlift is going to be a fantastic drill, especially doing it nice and slow, holding position for a second or two, and just getting used to that action. So the second drill is going to be a lat R&T drill, and engaging the lats is something that people very frequently struggle with within the sumo deadlift. They oftentimes find themselves trying to retract really hard or just not understanding the concept in its entirety. We have to understand that lats are a spine stabilizer and a trunk stabilizer, and they play an important role in getting our upper back tight and working against the barbell as we set up in our sumo. And individuals that don't engage their lats very well, they end up oftentimes, again, like I said previously, just staying bent over having their shoulder girdle kind of protract as they sumo deadlift, and always have this terrible fault at the top where they just can't quite finish. And furthermore, it's just not going to be a proficient position, nor is it going to be a position that necessarily keeps you at a reduced injury risk. It's definitely going to increase injury risk to be in that position. Oftentimes you'll see thoracic rounding and other things like that we do not want. So for this drill here, we're going to go ahead and take 2 bands. There's a few different ways that you can actually set this up. The first of which is having your partner actually pull it. The second one is actually, I could connect these bands to a rack like this. So I just wrap it around one side, wrap it around the other side, kind of get away from it, put the barbell down and work against it. But a partner is preferred, definitely preferred, because it's a bit of a pain in the ass, if I'm being honest, to set it up against a rack. Partner's definitely a little bit easier. So I'm gonna go ahead and pass these over to my partner here, just like so. I like to have it usually right above the elbow in this general area. And now from here, I'm gonna set up in my normal sumo deadlift stance. And I'm gonna instruct my partner to immediately create a little bit of tension, but ideally, I actually like them to create more tension as I actually set up. So I have to work harder against the bands as I set up as well. Now from here, I'm gonna go ahead and grab the barbell like I normally would, get my typical stance, go through my cadence of cues I usually use to set up, instruct them to pull a little bit harder as I actually pull into position. And now from here, I have something to press against and work against as I actually set up, making my upper body get nice and tall, working against the load even better. And I'm gonna go ahead and do that for my warm-up sets as well as my working sets. It's actually a great drill to do in your working sets as well. So there could be, 4, 5, 600, 700 pounds, whatever it may be, whatever your working set is, you could have on here as you're actually doing this drill here, working against these bands. This next one's gonna be a tempo setup, and my goal here is, again, just to increase positional awareness and actually aid in motor control as I'm setting up, really highlighting the things that we've already covered. So I'm gonna get into my position just like I normally would, and one of the big things that people struggle with when learning how to sumo deadlift is they'll have the perfect cues, the perfect warm-up, they'll have everything to perfection, and then they set up like this. Just as fast as physically possible, and it's kind of an intuitive want for a lot of people to do that, especially people with an athlete background. You'll see a lot of like previous football players, baseball players, track athletes, things of that nature. When they go to deadlifts, even when they're in the beginning stages of deadlifting, they have this intuitive almost need to go as fast as they can, but we have to kind of tame this. We have to calm this down, because just like any other motor action, when you're learning to do something for the very first time, it's key to go slow. Slower is better, okay? When you're going fast, you have an increased likelihood of messing it up. For example, when I first learned how to wrestle and I was learning how to do just a basic rock over step kind of shot, what they said was go as slow as possible. We take it by steps. Step first, then go to knee, then do this, then do that. And every single time I try to be explosive and go too fast too soon, it would fall apart. And what did my coach say? Speed comes with time. But an important distinction here is with the deadlift, you don't even need speed in the setup to begin with. No one absolutely needs to be fast in their setup. Even some of the most elite level deadlifters in the world, they pull into position fairly slow. Some people prefer going faster in their setup, and that's where you can earn speed with time, but you never really need it in the first place. So when it comes to this, it's getting used to building tension slowly. It's a fantastic drill to do so, and it kind of overcomes that want people have to go incredibly fast, because going fast in these beginning stages is detrimental to bettering your pattern. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna take anywhere from 4 to 6 seconds. I would say 4 seconds is bare minimum. And I'm not talking 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm talking 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, so on and so forth. Incredibly slow. So I'm gonna get into my normal position, hands down, go through my bracing mechanics, all that other good stuff. And then from here, I'm gonna go ahead and pull into position painfully slow, like so. And restart. Doing that several times as a primer before you actually deadlift is a fantastic drill, especially for beginners just learning how to kind of integrate all of the things that they're learning at once. This next drill here we're going to call a positional deadlift or positional pull. It's a really, really good drill to further improve your deadlift mechanics, but what we're really focusing specifically on here is building so much tension in the deadlift that the weight literally pops up by the end or by the time that you're actually done with your setup. So I'm going to do exactly that. I'm going to get used to really focusing on tensioning, and by focusing on tensioning, the way I like to think about it is I like to think about it like we're incrementally pushing our feet into the floor and working our back against the bar harder and harder and harder as we go through our setup. And by doing so incrementally harder, we should be able to pop the weight off the floor no matter what it is by the time we're in our end-all be-all position. And that's exactly what this drill teaches, and that's the biggest thing that even elite level deadlifters struggle with within their deadlift. That's the biggest thing holding a lot of deadlifters back, is their inability to create tension consistently and incrementally throughout their actual setup. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to set up just like I normally would, get my normal position, hinge down to the bar, and then from here I'm going to go ahead and really work on building so much tension that the weight ends up popping off the floor by the time I get into my end-all be-all position. I'm going to hold that for several seconds, and then I'm going to go ahead and start to deadlift up to the knee and drop it down. So it should look something like this. Drop it back down. The way I actually like to program this is I'll have them pause 1 inch off the ground for anywhere from 3 to 5 seconds, and then as they do this more and more, as they get better and better at it, I decrease the amount of time they pause for, and I speed up the transition from that pause point up to the knee. So when they become better and better at this, and they may not be as important for them to maintain that pause position, it'll look maybe something closer to this here. Just like that. There was still a slight hesitancy once I got to that pause point, but it immediately transitioned up to a half range of motion deadlift. Fantastic drill for, again, learning that idea of building so much tension that we pop the weight off the floor every single time. And the last progression, the fifth and final drill we're going to do, is just going to be a tempo deadlift, but not tempo in the setup necessarily. It's going to be a tempo eccentric and concentric. The entirety of your deadlift is going to be under a strict tempo to, again, improve your positional awareness. So what we're going to do here is we're going to combine all of the things that we've done so far, really highlight that external rotation, that lat engagement component, setting up very controlled, building so much tension that the weight pops up off the floor just by pulling into position. And then from there, as we actually go through the deadlift, coming up and down, going through the concentric and eccentric, we're gonna go very, very slow. The total amount of time under tension is gonna be anywhere from 8 to 10 seconds. I would suggest going 4 to 5 seconds on the way up, 4 to 5 seconds on the way down, and again, just improving positional awareness and ingraining a very nice pattern. So it's gonna look something like this here. And then doing that several times. This is going to really help to integrate all of the things that we've accomplished thus far and make it easier to incorporate the cues, because again, going really fast through our deadlifts is an easy and very proficient way to unlearn everything that you've learned. So this is going to be really, really good at ingraining those patterns and getting better at your sumo deadlift.